Good morning and happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome back to Frenshe Book Club, where I will be talking about the book Attacking Anxiety and Depression. Good morning. Hello. I just want to say, thank you guys so much for tuning in every Saturday. I hope this is helping you as much as it's helping me. This session 8, which is about what if thinking, was a complete turning moment for me with my anxiety. So this week I've really calmed down, and I think it's a lot to do with the what if. But we have someone who is joining us, so let me get her. Hold on. Okay, we have a therapist joining us. Sorry, my dogs are super excited. But we have a therapist joining us, so hopefully we can get her on. Hi, you guys. Hi. Can we do a house tour? Actually, there is a house tour on Architectural Digest, so check it out if you guys want to see my house. But as we're waiting for her, I have to say, I was just in Malibu. I was shooting a campaign photo shoot for Frenshe products that are coming soon. I'm so excited. And I don't know, there's a moment that I had there because I've been doing this session on what if thinking. And I just was at the, looking at the ocean, and I was just like, I need to let go in my life. I need to let go of micromanaging. I need to let go just in general of just kind of holding on to things. And I'm not kidding you. I was really bad with anxiety, a couple, maybe even 2 weeks ago. And it's amazing that this journey through this book, that sometimes it could be session 4 that people start to feel better. Sometimes it could be session 7 or session 12. But this session for me was a turning moment recently. And I think it was also just letting go. It talks about anticipatory anxiety. And I was having so much of that because I was having these 2 big things in my life happen, which was my baby turning 1 and her birthday party that we were planning, and also this huge campaign shoot that I was doing. That meant obviously so much to me and getting it right because I have been working on this product for the last 2 years. So I had a lot of that anxiety. And sometimes our brains just, even if we're just excited, it feels like anxiety, but it's actually excitement. But our brains just don't really know the difference between scary anxiety or excited anxiety. So I have some tools that have worked, and I want to share that with you. But let me try one more time. Let's see. I don't know why sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. But hi, you guys. Hi. Hi.
I'm so happy this worked.
I know, me too, because last time it didn't.
How are you? I am well. I'm excited to chat about anxiety. I heard you talking about excited anxiety or just anticipatory anxiety, and it does feel the same. But I think the really big thing is mentally acknowledging that I am excited, I am nervous, I am worried, I am afraid. All of those things are different.
I know. And that's so crazy that this session, I was saying how I had really 2 big things that I was focusing on. Well, definitely over the last couple of months was this campaign shoot that was this big shoot for me, but also my baby's birthday party that I was celebrating her turning 1. I also didn't have a baby shower because of COVID, so I was really going big with my birthday party. And I think there was just all this anxiety built up, which is excitement, but also, I don't know, I just had all this feeling of overwhelm and pressure and these 2 things happening at the same time. And it was a really big month for me, and I had a lot of work stuff. And so it was interesting that I finally got through that. And then my nervous system kind of went back to normal. And I also was talking about how even the morning of Jupiter's birthday party, I was getting ready and I was feeling anxious, but I knew it was over excitement versus like anything of worrying. And so I was just like, okay, my brain is just not seeing the difference between being excited and just, obviously like the worrying anxiety. So it's like, I'm just
Mhm.
excited. And one of the things that helped me while, for a minute, I was just like, let me just distract myself. I've always talked about this, but Candy Crush just weirdly distracts my brain and like makes me like focus on something. And it completely calmed me down in that moment.
I think Candy Crush has that impact on many people. I have walked past many folks like, oh, Candy Crush, oh, Candy Crush. So I think it might be an anxiety tool.
I really do think so because it really is like obviously, as a therapist, but also when I talk to my therapist, it's just anything that can distract you from the spiral thinking. Because it's like
Yeah.
once you're like thinking, thinking, thinking. And I think Candy Crush just makes me focus on it. And I'm like kind of like playing this game and it's like you're in it and then you're like succeeding at it and you're like getting super excited. And it was just like it really calmed me down. And recently I've been using it if I'm feeling anything like you know, obviously there's like that PTSD from where you felt panicky. So I have felt panicky in a car. And I was in a car being driven to set for my shoot. And so I was just like, okay, it's okay if you feel anxious because this is where you've obviously had a panic attack before. But I did Candy Crush and it was like really calmed me down. So I don't know, but I'm like, it's working for me.
I think it's important to know what things that do work because even with meditation, some people, it just doesn't work. They can be too focused on getting it right or too focused on the thoughts in their heads and thinking they're doing it wrong, that the meditation is not effective. So there is no one strategy for everyone. Like if you do this, you will completely manage your anxiety. It's like, do different things, figure out what works for you, and it may not be what works for Ashley. It might not be what works for me, but maybe going on a walk works for you. Maybe calling a friend and processing. So really figuring out what your thing is.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting, like I said, that this session was about what if thinking and anticipatory anxiety because of everything I had going on in my life, finally doing those things that I was so stressed about. And it talks about in this session of the book about really it's time to try your limitations to anything that makes you feel anxious. You've got to start getting yourself out there and putting yourself out there to realize that it's okay to have those feelings, but to push yourself through that. And so I feel like that has been a lot of what I've been doing. Like there's so many things that I was anxious about, obviously traveling with the baby and like going to a hotel and we've been quarantined for so long and obviously just, just the whole pandemic of it all. And I finally was just like I said to everybody, I was like I had to just let go. I had to let go because I could feel myself like this to everything in my life. And I was like, that's just not helping me. It's not helping my anxiety. It's not helping me. And I was just like, you know what? It's time to let go and trust the universe. And I think for a minute, I kind of wasn't in that place. And
Mm-hmm.
so by doing that, that's also when I felt like my nervous system kind of calmed down. And ever since then, I've been feeling like obviously I'll have a little bit of like that, anxiety from having a cup of coffee in the morning, but I'm not so scared of the symptoms it makes me feel. Where like 3 weeks ago, I was very scared of how I was feeling.
Hmm. Avoidance is one of the biggest ways that people deal with anxiety. They're like, if I avoid being social, if I avoid planes, if I avoid crowds, if I avoid going to this or doing that, my anxiety will go away. And it's not true. What happens is you continue to have the anxiety without even having the experience. The real way to rid yourself of anxiety in certain situations is to face the fear. If you are afraid of heights, you have to actually extinguish your fear. You have to begin to tolerate heights to some capacity, and in doing that, that's how you get rid of the anxiety. You will always be anxious if you avoid it. I've heard of people who don't drive on freeways or expressways. I don't know what you call them, but freeways, because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. So they take the streets everywhere. Or people who are like, I don't take planes, so they prefer to drive, even if it's a really long distance. So really thinking about how the anxiety is impacting your ability to do things in life. Like if you're like, I'm not flying anywhere, and your kids move across the country or your parents move across the country, are you driving 3 days to see them? Like what happens?
I
Like what happens in these scenarios? Like how do we face the fear of the thing instead of saying, well, avoidance is the best strategy? It just doesn't work.
I know, and I feel like that's important just in everyday life. I mean, I feel like most of the stuff that I've done in my career, if I knew what it entailed, like I remember thinking when I was doing, I did a Broadway show when I was 8, which is Les Miserables, and I had an idea of probably how, it was like, I was like, oh, we probably are listening to the song as we're singing it. And that's clearly not what happens on Broadway. Like you're singing and you don't have any headphones. But I was 8 years old. I had no idea. But I remember feeling that fear. And I remember feeling fear when it came to doing like the movies I did, High School Musical, and I auditioned. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. This is not like super easy. This is definitely harder than what I've done in the past with acting, because it's like music, dance, and acting. And I was like, oh, this is so scary. What if I just avoided it? Like that would have been horrible. Like you have to push yourself. You have to push yourself, because there could be something so amazing that once you do, it's like it's so good for you in your life. So it is so, I think, in all areas of life, it's never good to avoid something that scares you. If it's like they say, it's like the 3 R's. Is it reasonable, rational, or what's the other one? um Hold on, let me go into my book. Realistic, I think. And it's just something that I feel like we should think of what it is that's scaring us and try to get through it. You will get through it. You will have anxiety, but you'll be able to manage those feelings better if like, if you avoid plane rides, like you'll never get to go to places and see such beautiful things. And so it's like, I feel like this is the week that they want you to kind of push yourself. And I'm so glad that I have been, because it is all about, to me, managing the anxiety. I feel like anxiety never goes away. Um, it's something that I've always had. It's also something that's really good, because there's going to be those times where you're like, oh my gosh, this is like anxiety for talking in front of people. And that's a very natural, normal thing. I just have managed it really well. And I feel like these are the tools that have helped me. But I feel like, sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming, my anxiety. And that's what I went through recently. And so I knew, okay, let's go back to what's helped me before, because, this is obviously just getting a little bit worse for some reason. And I obviously like to kind of go in and see what is exactly bothering me and why I'm so anxious at a certain time. And a lot of it does have to do with stress and overwhelm. What would you say is helpful to, for stress management, I guess?
One of the biggest things that's helpful is not trying to extinguish stress. Stress is a part of life. And the best way to manage it is to practice things on the front end, not in the middle of crisis or when things get really hectic. We typically have an idea of when something does and doesn't feel good. We feel stressed when we commit to the thing that we didn't want to do. We feel stressed when we're like, oh my day is already crazy, I'm going to add this other thing. So many times we are creating the stress by putting ourselves in situations that we know might heighten our stress. Someone in the comment mentioned, well, there's been a lot of things mentioned that I've seen, but one thing mentioned is, what is a definition of anxiety? And the only thing I can think of to describe it as, it is a feeling.
Mhm.
Anxiety is a feeling. It is a feeling like being happy, being excited, being sad, being mad. When we are anxious, we tend to lean more towards worry about the past, the present, or even the future. Anxiety robs people of sleep most often. That's where we see a lot of anxiety. Many sleep issues are really anxiety issues. Anxiety causes you to have a physical response, so headaches, migraines, heart palpitations, sweating, muscle aches, IBS, all sorts of stomach issues. The thing about anxiety is it doesn't go away. You mentioned that, Ashley. It doesn't go away because it's a feeling. I mean, do we ever say, I will never be happy again? I will never be sad again? Typically, no. Like, we know these feelings will come and go, and it is the same way with anxiety. Now, there are some of us who tend towards, heightened anxiety. And in those situations, it's important to uncover what that feeling is trying to tell you. What is
Mhm.
happening? What should I be worried about? What am I feeling afraid of? Not necessarily like this feeling is here, it's bad, I have to get rid of it. But what is this feeling trying to teach me about this moment? What is this feeling uncovering about me? Not necessarily, again, I need to get rid of this. There is no time where we're like, I'm too happy, I don't want this. That's a feeling. Now with the negative, I don't want to say negative feelings, but negative feelings, so sad, anxious, angry, we are always trying to rid our, like, I'm too angry, I need anger management. It's like, I think anger is good. We need to feel angry sometimes. Here's the thing: when you're angry, you don't want to behave as if you're angry. You want it to be a feeling, not a behavior. You want
Mhm.
to be able to feel anxious and say, okay, I am so excited about doing a good job that I am a little worried that I won't. And
Mhm.
that's okay. But really talking yourself through any difficult emotion is the most helpful thing you can do, because emotions are good. I would say that, maybe 500 years ago, we would have loved to be anxious if we were walking through the forest and you hear a little noise and you're like, oh gosh, that's a bear. Like, you want, you want
Yeah.
some level of anxiety to be present, because it does inform you. Even if you are walking in your neighborhood, you want to be alerted to when someone is walking behind you. Like, we need anxiety. We don't want it to completely go away. We just want to be able to manage it when it comes up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like I feel that we definitely need it and we have it for a reason, but we don't want to walk through the world like there's a bear everywhere. Like that's sometimes is when mine is heightened. It's like almost as if that's happening. So it's like you have to, yeah, just like what you were saying, acknowledge the feeling and just know that it's a feeling. I think that when, for me, when it starts to spiral, it's like, what is this feeling? Oh gosh, why do I feel like this? Oh, why does my stomach feel like this? Why does my head, so it initiates this feeling. And instead of, it's like, perfect example, what if? So it goes into these little situations where I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I have this? What if I have that? Why is this feeling? And it's like, stop that what if thinking. It's like, what if you're completely fine? What if this is just a feeling? What if you're just excited? Instead of going to that negative, I think that it's the positive self-talk that has helped me stop recently going into the spiral of like the anxiety and getting worse and going into a panic attack. Because it's when I'm in that negative thinking that something really is wrong with me in that moment. then I start to get really ramped up and have a panic attack. So I like that. I love that you said that it's just a feeling, it comes and goes, and that's just like being happy or being sad. But I find that when you accept the anxiety feeling, it goes away faster versus trying to avoid that feeling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We like to fight back, right? Instead of allowing things to just be. I'm anxious. How often do we hear people acknowledge that? I mean, we'll see so many other things. I sometimes see, even socially, people trying to warm up by drinking or doing different things, because really what they are is anxious. I am anxious to be in this social setting, not know anyone, be expected to, smile and have these conversations. What would it be like for us to really acknowledge that I am anxious in social settings?
Mm-hmm.
I am
Yeah.
anxious about flying. I am anxious about traveling with my baby. All of those things, just really calling it what it is takes a lot of power away from it, because part of it is us not acknowledging it and just being like, I don't even know what this is. And it's like, you feel anxious. I have heard, I remember a family member, they just had a major surgery and they started to experience some sleep issues. And I said to them, are you afraid that you will die in your sleep? And they said, yes. I said, that is a very real concern after you've had a surgery. Like, that makes sense that you don't want to go to sleep. Like, you're having this sleep issue. You're afraid to go to sleep because you're thinking like, oh my gosh, what if I won't wake up? And just naming that, the person was able to say, like, that's what it is. Like, I didn't even think about that. I was just like, insomnia. And it's like, no, it's really anxiety. You're
Yeah.
afraid. And that makes sense. But guess what? You can't control when you die.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
person did not die in their sleep, by the way. But I just, I'm
Yeah.
like, those are things that you can't control, and your way of trying to control it is not sleeping.
Yeah, it's just not helping you at all. And I think that's like the letting go too. It's like letting go and trusting that everything will be okay. Um, it's like, yeah, you feel like as someone who has anxiety, kind of being in control, like it's like, oh, I'm better when I'm driving. But if someone else is driving me, I'm not so good, And it's like we have to let go of that. And that is something that obviously I've worked on as well. And yeah, I mean, this is like all so helpful. Is there specific tools besides, I mean, I meditate, I love meditation, but is there specific tools that you love to share on helping anxiety and in those moments?
I think that intentional breathing is really helpful in social settings. In social settings, you don't want to be awkward, like, you don't want to do that in the middle of a dinner party. But just doing maybe like a 4 in, hold for 7, out for 8 in the car before you go in could be really helpful.
Hmm.
Acknowledging the anxiety. There are so many workbooks that are helpful for anxiety. One of my favorites to recommend is the anxiety workbook. That is the title of the workbook. You just, that's it. That's the workbook. I think there are so many strategies around dealing with the thing that is making you anxious. For me, I talk a lot about relationships. So if you have relationships or people or certain interactions that are making you anxious, you may need to set boundaries to alleviate the anxiety. You may need to have some hard conversations to alleviate the anxiety. Like, there are so many things that you might actually need to address, because remember, a part of the anxiety is trying to help you uncover what is happening. So if you are anxious about seeing a certain friend, why is that? You have 20 friends. Why this one? Why are you upset about this? So how do you get to the bottom of what's going on in this relationship that's causing anxiety?
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
speak to that thing? Because the anxiety typically goes away when we address what that hard thing is. Like you said, I was so afraid to, you know, travel with the baby. The anxiety is reduced once you start to travel with the baby. So
Yeah.
doing that anxiety provoking thing alleviates the anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're seeing that the more you do it, the more you're not having like, you get comfortable with it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just kind of getting through that first, kind of situation. I had my first panic attack on a plane a couple years ago. I'd never had a panic attack before then. So of course that gives me a little bit of that PTSD where I'm like, oh, flying, like what if that happens again? But it's so important to keep doing it. And the more you do it, you're like, oh, I felt completely comfortable and I did not have that feeling. And if that feeling arises, I know what I can do. I have the tools. I can do breath work. I can meditate. The biggest thing that has always helped me when I've gotten to that place with panicky feelings is breathing. Like just having a meditation on my phone to where I can like put my earbuds in and just breathe. That has completely stopped me from going into like a really bad panic attack. Um, so it's like it's all within us. Like the breath work is within us. Like we are the safe place where I think most of the time we think that, a safe place is somewhere else or with somebody else or at home. And it's like so interesting because we are actually our safe place because we have all the tools within our body to help us get over those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's just knowing that and trusting that. But this has been such a great conversation, and I'm so glad it worked. But where can we find you? Like, what's your Instagram handle?
So I am Nedra Tawab on Instagram. I have a website. I have a book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. I have a workbook, the Set Boundaries Workbook. I'm a mental health therapist. And as you know, therapists talk about, I was telling my uncle the other day that anxiety and depression is the cold and flu of therapy, right? Like this is what we talk about all the time. So I love to talk about, of course, the things that we're familiar with and also relationships.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so, so much. And I am definitely going to check out your book because that is something that I still need to work on is setting boundaries. So, thank you for joining me. And yeah, thank you for spending Saturday morning with us.
You're welcome. Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.